Marcus Williams had been living on the streets of Manhattan for 3 years. Every morning, he would wake up in the same doorway on Fifth Avenue, watching wealthy people walk past him like he was invisible. His cardboard sign read, "Veteran. Anything helps. God bless." Most days, he collected enough coins to buy a sandwich and maybe a cup of coffee. Marcus wasn't always homeless. He served 2 tours in Afghanistan as a Marine, came home with injuries that weren't visible to the naked eye. The nightmares started first, then came the drinking. His wife, Sarah, tried to help, but Marcus pushed everyone away. One day, he came, home to empty rooms and divorce papers on the kitchen table. Without Sarah's income and struggling with his own demons, Marcus couldn't keep up with rent. The eviction notice came on a Tuesday. By Friday, he was sleeping in his car. When the car got repossessed, the streets became his only option. The morning of November 15th started like any other. Marcus folded his thin blanket and tucked it into his backpack. The November air was getting colder, and winter was coming fast. He had learned that timing mattered on the streets. Too early and the police would move him along. Too late, and all the good spots would be taken by other homeless people looking for a place to set up for the day. He chose his usual spot near Trump Tower, not because he had any political feelings one way or another, but because the foot traffic was steady. Business people, tourists, shoppers, they all walked by this corner throughout the day. Some dropped coins, others pretended not to see him. Marcus had learned not to take it personally. Everyone had their own problems. Around 10 in the morning, Marcus noticed more activity than usual around the building. Black cars with tinted windows lined the street. Men in suits with earpieces stood at various points, their eyes constantly scanning the crowd. Marcus had seen this before. Someone important was coming or going. Usually it meant his corner would be cleared by security, so he started packing his things. "Sir, you'll need to move along." A security guard approached. Him. Marcus nodded and began folding his cardboard sign. He was used to this routine. No point arguing or making trouble. He'd just find another spot a few blocks away and return later when things calmed down. As Marcus gathered his belongings, he heard commotion behind him. Cameras were flashing and reporters were shouting questions. A group of people emerged from the building, moving quickly toward the waiting cars. In the center of the group, Marcus recognized the distinctive figure of Donald Trump. This was back when Trump was still primarily known as a businessman and reality TV star before his political career took off. The group was moving fast, but something unexpected happened. As they passed Marcus's corner, Trump suddenly stopped. The security team looked nervous, unsure why their principal had broken from the planned route. Trump walked directly toward Marcus, who was still crouched down, stuffing his blanket into his backpack. "Excuse me," Trump said, causing Marcus to look up. "You're a veteran, aren't you?" Trump had noticed the small Marine Corps pin on Marcus's worn jacket and the military-style dog tags hanging around his neck. Marcus stood up slowly, unsure what was happening. "Yes, sir, Marines. 2 tours in Afghanistan." He straightened his shoulders slightly, muscle memory from his military days kicking in despite his current circumstances. "What's your name, Marine?" Trump asked, extending his hand. Marcus was surprised by the gesture. Most people avoided physical contact with homeless individuals. "Marcus Williams, sir," he replied, shaking the offered hand. Trump looked at Marcus for a moment, taking in his situation. The cameras were rolling, but Trump seemed focused entirely on the conversation. "How long have you been out here, Marcus?" 3 years, sir. Since I got back and things fell apart." Marcus wasn't used to anyone asking about his story, especially not someone who clearly had never missed a meal or slept in the cold. "You served your country, and now you're living on the streets?" Trump's voice carried a tone of disbelief, as if the concept was personally offensive to him. "It happens to more of us than people think, sir," Marcus replied honestly. He had met dozens of other veterans during his time on the streets. Each had their own version of the same story: service, return, struggle, and eventually homelessness. The security team was getting antsy. clearly wanting to move their principal away from what they saw as an unpredictable situation. The media was capturing every moment, their cameras focused on this unexpected interaction between a billionaire and a homeless veteran. Trump turned to one of his assistants. "Get me a card," he said. Then he looked back at Marcus. "I want you to call my office tomorrow morning. Ask for Jennifer Martinez. Tell her we spoke today and that I want to help." Trump reached into his wallet and pulled out several $100 bills. "This is for tonight. Get a room, get a meal, get cleaned. Up, then call my office." He pressed the money and business card into Marcus's hand. Marcus stared at the cash in disbelief. It was more money than he had seen in months. "Sir, I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything yet," Trump replied. "Just call the office tomorrow. We'll figure out something more permanent." With that, Trump rejoined his group and continued toward the waiting cars. Marcus stood on the sidewalk, holding the money and business card, watching as the black cars pulled away. The reporters were still there, now turning their attention to him. Several approached with microphones and cameras, asking questions about what had just happened. "Did Donald Trump really just give you money?" one reporter asked. "What did he say to you?" asked another. Marcus felt overwhelmed by the sudden attention. A few minutes ago, he was invisible. Now cameras were focused on him and reporters wanted to hear his story. He asked if I was a veteran," Marcus said, still processing what had occurred. "He gave me money and told me to call his office tomorrow." The simple statement would soon spark a nationwide conversation about wealth, responsibility, and how society treats its veterans. That night, Marcus checked into a small hotel room for the first time in 3 years. As he sat on the bed, clean after his first hot shower in months, he stared at the business card and wondered if tomorrow would bring real change or just another disappointment. Marcus woke up in the hotel room at 6 in the morning, not from nightmares for once, but from excitement and nervousness. The business card sat on the nightstand next to the clock radio. He had stared at it for hours the night before, wondering if this was real or if he had imagined the entire encounter. The remaining money in his wallet proved it had actually happened. He took another shower, wanting to make sure he was as presentable as possible for the phone call. Looking in the mirror, Marcus barely recognized himself. The hot water and soap had washed away months of street grime. His hair was still long and unkempt, and his clothes were the same worn items he had been wearing for weeks. But he looked more like the person he used to be. At exactly 9 o'clock, Marcus dialed the number on the business card. His hands were shaking slightly as he waited for someone to answer. After 2 rings, a professional voice answered, "Trump Organization, how may I direct your call?" "I need to speak with Jennifer Martinez, please," Marcus said, his voice more steady than he felt. "May I ask who's calling?" "Marcus Williams. Mr. Trump told me to call and ask for her. We spoke yesterday outside Trump Tower." There was a brief pause. "Please hold for 1 moment, Mr. Williams." Marcus waited, listening to classical music while on hold. Part of him expected to be disconnected or told that no one knew what he was talking about. After what felt like an eternity but was probably only 2 minutes, a woman's voice came on the line. "Mr. Williams? This is Jennifer Martinez. Mr. Trump briefed me about your situation. He'd like to meet with you this afternoon if possible. Would 2 o'clock work for you?" Marcus almost dropped the phone. He had hoped for help, but a personal meeting was beyond what he had imagined. "Yes, ma'am. 2 o'clock would be perfect." "Excellent. Please come to the main reception area at Trump Tower. Security will be expecting you." "And Mr. Williams? Mr. Trump asked me to arrange for you to visit a men's clothing store first. There's a shop called Kingston & Associates on 47th Street. They're expecting you at 11. Everything will be taken care of." After hanging up, Marcus sat on the edge of the hotel bed trying to process what was happening. A billionaire was not only meeting with him personally but had arranged for new clothes. It felt surreal, like something that happened to other people, not to a homeless veteran who had been invisible to the world just 24 hours earlier. The clothing store was an experience unlike anything Marcus had encountered during his time on the streets. The staff treated him with respect and professionalism, measuring him for a proper suit, dress shirt, tie, and shoes. The manager, Mr. Kingston, mentioned that Mr. Trump had personally called and insisted on the best service. Haven't seen someone so excited about helping another person in a long time, Mr. Kingston commented as he adjusted the jacket. He was very specific about making sure you looked sharp for your meeting. By 1:30, Marcus stood outside Trump Tower wearing his new suit, feeling more confident than he had in years. The reflection in the building's glass doors showed a man who looked capable and professional, not someone who had been sleeping on the streets. The transformation was remarkable, and Marcus wondered if this was how other people saw possibilities in him that he had forgotten existed. Security recognized him immediately and escorted him to an elevator that whisked him to an upper floor. The Trump Organization offices were impressive. Marble floors, expensive artwork, and floor-to-ceiling windows offering stunning views of Manhattan. Marcus had seen wealth before, but never from the inside looking out. Jennifer Martinez met him at the reception area. She was a professional woman in her 40s with a warm smile and a firm handshake. "Mr. Williams, it's a pleasure to meet you. Mr. Trump is running a few minutes late, but he'll be with you shortly. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water?" "Coffee would be great, thank you," Marcus replied, still adjusting to being treated like an important visitor rather than someone to be avoided. As he waited, Marcus looked around the office. Photos on the walls showed Trump with various celebrities, politicians, and business leaders. Awards and commendations were displayed prominently. This was clearly the workspace of someone who had achieved tremendous success, which made the previous day's encounter even more surprising. "Marcus!" Trump's voice boomed as he entered the reception area. He was wearing an expensive suit and looked exactly like the successful businessman Marcus had seen on television and in magazines. "You look fantastic. That suit fits you perfectly." They moved into Trump's private office, which was even more impressive than the reception area. The desk was massive, and the walls were covered with magazine covers, photographs, and certificates. Trump gestured for Marcus to sit in one of the leather chairs facing the desk. "So, tell me your story," Trump said, settling into his chair. "I want to understand how a Marine who served his country ends up living on the streets." Marcus spent the next 30 minutes explaining his journey from military service to homelessness. Trump listened intently, occasionally asking questions or making comments. He seemed genuinely interested in understanding not just Marcus's individual situation, but the broader issues facing veterans. "This is unacceptable," Trump said after Marcus finished his story. "We have people who served this country living on the streets while bureaucrats in Washington collect paychecks and do nothing. Something needs to be done about this." Trump stood up and walked to the window overlooking Manhattan. "Here's what we're going to do, Marcus. First, we're getting you permanent housing. I own several buildings in the city, and there's a nice apartment available in one of them. Rent-free for the first year while you get back on your feet." Marcus felt his eyes welling up with tears. "Mr. Trump, I don't know how to thank you." "Don't thank me yet, because there's more," Trump continued. "Second, we're getting you connected with the right people for your PTSD. I know some excellent doctors who specialize in helping veterans. Third, we're finding you a job. I've got several businesses, and there's always a place for someone who wants to work hard." The meeting lasted almost 2 hours. Trump made several phone calls during their conversation, speaking with various people about housing options, medical care, and employment opportunities. Marcus watched in amazement as doors that had been closed to him for years suddenly opened with a few phone calls from the right person. As their meeting concluded, Trump walked Marcus to the elevator. "Marcus, I want you to understand something. This isn't charity. This is America taking care of the people who took care of America. You earned this through your service to the country." The elevator doors opened, and Trump extended his hand again. "Jennifer will coordinate everything with you." You start your new life tomorrow. As Marcus rode down in the elevator, he realized that his 3 years on the streets might finally be coming to an end, not through luck or chance, but because someone with the power to make a difference decided to use that power for good. The video of Trump's encounter with Marcus had been circulating online since the previous evening. By morning, it had been viewed millions of times across social media platforms. News outlets picked up the story, and opinion pieces began appearing within hours. The footage showed a clear interaction between extreme wealth and desperate poverty, creating a perfect storm of public interest and debate. Sarah Chen, a reporter for CNN, was assigned to follow up on the story. She had covered homeless issues before and was immediately curious about what would happen next. Would this be a one-time publicity gesture, or was there genuine substance behind Trump's apparent promise to help? Sarah began investigating both Marcus's background and Trump's history with charitable causes. Meanwhile, Marcus was experiencing his first morning in 3 years without having to worry about where he would sleep that night. Jennifer Martinez had arranged for him to move into a studio apartment in a Trump-owned building in Queens. It wasn't luxury housing, but it had everything Marcus needed: a bed, a kitchen, a private bathroom, and most importantly, a front door that locked with his own key. The apartment was furnished simply but adequately. There was a small table with 2 chairs, a couch that could double as seating for guests, basic kitchen appliances, and a television. On the kitchen counter, Marcus found a welcome basket with groceries, toiletries, and a note from Jennifer explaining the building rules and providing contact information for various services. As Marcus unpacked his few belongings, his cell phone rang. It was a new phone that Jennifer had given him the previous day, along with a month of paid service. The caller ID showed an unknown number. "Hello?" Marcus answered hesitantly. "Is this Marcus Williams, the veteran from the Trump Tower video?" The voice belonged to a woman who sounded professional but excited. "Yes, this is Marcus," he replied, unsure how anyone had gotten his number. "My name is Rebecca Foster from Good Morning America. We'd love to have you on our show to talk about your experience with Mr. Trump. Would you be interested?" Before Marcus could answer, the phone beeped with another incoming call. Then another. Within an hour, he had received calls from CNN, Fox News, The Today Show, and several local New York stations. Everyone wanted to interview him about his encounter with Trump and what had happened afterward. Marcus felt overwhelmed by the attention. He had spent 3 years being invisible, and suddenly everyone wanted to hear his story. He called Jennifer Martinez for advice on how to handle the media requests. "Mr. Trump anticipated this might happen," Jennifer told him. "He suggests you speak with whoever you feel comfortable with, but be honest about your experience. Don't exaggerate anything, and don't let anyone put words in your mouth. The truth is powerful enough on its own." Marcus decided to start with one interview to test the waters. He chose CNN because Sarah Chen had seemed genuine and interested in understanding the broader issues beyond just his personal story. They arranged to meet at his new apartment the following morning. When Sarah arrived with her camera crew, Marcus was nervous but determined to tell his story accurately. The interview lasted 90 minutes, covering everything from his military service to his years on the streets to his unexpected encounter with Trump. "What was your first impression when Mr. Trump stopped to talk with you?" Sarah asked. "Honestly, I was confused," Marcus replied. "Nobody had really seen me as a person in a long time. Most people look right through homeless people like we're not even there. But he looked me in the eye and asked about my service. That was unexpected. Some people are saying this was just a publicity stunt. How do you respond to that?" Marcus considered the question carefully. "All I can tell you is what I experienced. He didn't have to give me money. He didn't have to set up this apartment or arrange for job interviews. He didn't have to spend 2 hours in his office listening to my story. If it was just for publicity, there were easier ways to get good press." The interview covered Marcus's struggles with PTSD, his path to homelessness, and his hopes for the future. Sarah was impressed by his honesty and his refusal to either overpraise or criticize Trump beyond his direct experience. When the CNN segment aired 3 days later, it generated even more interest in the story. The interview showed Marcus as intelligent, articulate, and genuine, which contradicted many people's assumptions about homeless individuals. Comments on the news website ranged from supportive to skeptical to outright hostile. Some viewers praised Trump for helping a veteran in need. "This is what real leadership looks like," wrote one commenter. "He saw a problem and took action instead of just talking about it." Others questioned the motives behind the gesture. One homeless guy gets help while thousands of others are ignored. "This is just a rich man buying good publicity," another comment read. A third group focused on the systemic issues revealed by Marcus's story. "The fact that veterans are homeless at all shows how broken our system is. One billionaire helping, one person doesn't fix the underlying problem." Marcus read some of the comments and found them troubling. He hadn't anticipated that his story would become a political football, with people using it to support their existing opinions about wealth inequality, veteran care, and social responsibility. The attention brought unexpected consequences. Marcus received dozens of letters at his new address, some supportive and others critical. A few contained money from people who wanted to help. Others contained hate mail from people who thought he was either lying about his situation or taking advantage of Trump's generosity. More surprisingly, Marcus began hearing from other homeless veterans who had seen his story. They called, wrote letters, and some even showed up at his apartment building, hoping he could somehow connect them with similar help. Marcus felt guilty that he couldn't help them all, and worried that people expected him to be a spokesperson for every homeless person in America. One evening, as Marcus sat in his apartment reading through another pile of letters, his phone rang. It was Trump. "Marcus, how are you settling in?" Trump asked. "Very well, sir. I can't thank you enough for everything you've done. I've been seeing the news coverage. How are you handling all the attention?" Marcus paused, trying to find the right words. "It's overwhelming, honestly. I never expected this much interest in my story. Some of it's positive, but some of it's pretty harsh." "Welcome to being in the public eye," Trump said with a laugh. "Everyone's a critic when they're sitting behind a keyboard. The important thing is that you know the truth about what happened and why it happened. Don't let other people's opinions change your story." Trump continued, "I'm calling because I've been thinking about what you said during our meeting, about how many veterans are struggling. I want to do more than help just one person. Would you be interested in working with me on something bigger?" Marcus felt a surge of excitement and nervousness. "What did you have in mind?" "I'll explain everything when we meet next week. But I think your story could be the beginning of something that helps a lot more people than just Marcus Williams." After hanging up, Marcus looked around his small apartment. 3 months ago, he had been sleeping in doorways and wondering where his next meal would come from. Now he was living in his own place and might be part of something that could help other veterans in similar situations. The transformation seemed impossible, but it was happening one day at a time. The meeting with Trump took place on a Thursday morning in his office at Trump Tower. This time, Marcus felt more comfortable in the luxurious surroundings. He wore one of the suits from his shopping trip, and his confidence had grown considerably over the past few weeks of having stable housing and regular meals. Trump was seated at his desk reviewing documents when Marcus arrived. Jennifer Martinez was also present, along with 2 other people Marcus didn't recognize, a middle-aged woman in a business suit and an older man wearing a military pin on his jacket lapel. "Marcus, glad you could make it," Trump said, standing, to greet him. "I want you to meet some people. This is Amanda Richardson. She runs charitable foundations for several of my companies. And this is Colonel Robert Hayes, retired Army. He's been working with veteran organizations for the past 10 years. After handshakes and introductions, Trump got straight to the point. "Marcus, your story has gotten a lot of attention, both positive and negative, but more importantly, it's opened people's eyes to how many veterans are struggling. Amanda has been researching the numbers, and they're worse than I thought." Amanda opened a folder and shared statistics that made Marcus's stomach sink. There were an estimated 40,000 homeless veterans across the country on any given night. Many more were living paycheck to paycheck, one crisis away from being on the streets themselves. The federal programs designed to help were underfunded and overwhelmed. "The system isn't working," Colonel Hayes added. "I've seen guys who served 3 tours in Iraq waiting 6 months just to get their first appointment at the VA. By the time they get help, some of them have lost everything: their families, their homes, their hope." Trump leaned forward in his chair. "Here's what I'm proposing. We start a foundation specifically focused on helping homeless veterans, not just throwing money at the problem, but creating a comprehensive program that addresses housing, health care, job training, and mental health support." Marcus listened as Trump outlined his vision. It was ambitious. The foundation would partner with existing veteran organizations, create job training programs within Trump's various businesses, and establish transitional housing in several cities. The goal was to help veterans get back on their feet permanently, not just provide temporary relief. "But here's the key part," Trump continued, looking directly at Marcus. "We want you to be the face of this foundation. You understand what these guys are going through because you've been there. You can speak to them in a way that bureaucrats and politicians can't." Marcus felt a mixture of honor and terror at the suggestion. "Mr. Trump, I'm grateful for everything you've done for me, but I'm not sure I'm qualified to run a foundation. I've been homeless for 3 years. I don't have experience with management or fundraising or any of those things." "That's exactly why you're perfect for this," Amanda interjected. "People trust authenticity. They can spot a fake from miles away. You've lived this experience, and that gives you credibility that money can't buy." Colonel Hayes nodded in agreement. "Marcus, I've worked with a lot of veteran advocates over the years. The most effective ones are the guys who've been in the trenches themselves. You know what works and what doesn't because you've needed those services." Trump stood up and walked to the window overlooking Manhattan. "Look, Marcus, I'm not asking you to figure this out alone. You'll have a whole team supporting you. Amanda, we'll handle the business side, Colonel Hayes will manage the veteran outreach, and you'll be the voice that tells people why this matters." The conversation continued for 2 more hours. They discussed specific programs, funding sources, and timeline for launching the foundation. Trump was clearly serious about the project. He had already committed $5 million of his own money as startup funding and was confident he could raise much more from other donors. As the meeting wrapped up, Trump handed Marcus a business card for a life coach and therapist who specialized in working with people transitioning from crisis situations to positions of responsibility. "Dr. Patricia Williams, no relation to you, helps people develop leadership skills. I think it would be good for you to work with her as we get this foundation off the ground." Walking back to his apartment, Marcus's head was spinning with possibilities and concerns. The idea of helping other veterans was appealing, but he worried about whether he was really ready for such a public role. His own recovery was still fragile. He had good days and bad days, and sometimes the nightmares still kept him awake. That evening, Marcus called his ex-wife Sarah for the first time in over 2 years. He had found her number online and spent an hour working up the courage to dial it. She answered on the 3rd ring, and her voice carried a mixture of surprise and caution. "Marcus, is this really you?" "Hi, Sarah. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted to call and let you know I'm okay. I've been seeing the news stories." There was a long pause. "I saw the video of you with Donald Trump. I couldn't believe it was really you. You look so different." They talked for 30 minutes. Sarah shared that she had remarried and was happy, which Marcus found he was genuinely pleased to hear. She asked about his current situation and was amazed by the transformation in his circumstances and his attitude. "You sound like the Marcus I married," she said. "Confident, hopeful, thinking about the future. I haven't heard that voice in years." "I feel more like myself than I have since I got back from Afghanistan," Marcus admitted. "Having a place to live and knowing where my next meal is coming from makes a huge difference in how clearly I can think." Before they hung up, Sarah said something that stayed with Marcus for days afterward. "I'm proud of you for getting your life back together, but I'm even more proud that you want to use your experience to help other people." That's the Marcus I remember, always trying to take care of his fellow Marines. The next morning, Marcus had his first appointment with Dr. Patricia Williams. Her office was in Midtown Manhattan, and she had an impressive wall of degrees and certifications. But what struck Marcus most was how she listened without judgment and asked questions that helped him think through his concerns about the foundation role. "Marcus, you keep saying you're not qualified to represent veterans," she observed. "But you're a Marine who served 2 combat tours and survived 3 years of homelessness. That takes more strength and resilience than most people will ever need in their entire lives." Over the following weeks, Marcus worked with Dr. Williams to develop his public speaking skills and think through his role in the foundation. He also spent time with Colonel Hayes, learning about existing veteran programs and understanding the gaps that their foundation could fill. The more Marcus learned about the challenges facing homeless veterans, the more motivated he became to be part of the solution. He realized that his experience, as difficult as it had been, could be valuable in ways he had never imagined. Instead of something to be ashamed of, his time on the streets was becoming a source of insight and credibility. 2. Months after that first meeting with Trump, the Marcus Williams Veterans Foundation held its first press conference. Marcus stood at a podium in Trump Tower, wearing a sharp suit and speaking confidently about the foundation's mission to help homeless veterans rebuild their lives. The transformation from the man who had been sleeping in doorways was remarkable, but what impressed people most was his genuine passion for helping others who were still struggling. The press conference was covered by major news outlets, and the foundation's website received thousands of visits within hours. Donations began coming in from across the country, and other veterans started reaching out for help. Marcus Williams had gone from invisible to influential, and he was determined to use that platform responsibly. 6 months after the Marcus Williams Veterans Foundation launched, the results were exceeding everyone's expectations. The foundation had helped over 200 homeless veterans find permanent housing, and their job training programs had achieved an 85% placement rate. More importantly, the success stories were inspiring other cities to develop similar programs. Marcus had grown into his role as the foundation's spokesperson and director of veteran services. He traveled to different cities, speaking at conferences, meeting with local officials, and most importantly, talking directly with homeless veterans who needed help. His authenticity and personal experience opened doors that had been closed to other advocates for years. The foundation's success had also attracted critics. Some argued that private charity shouldn't be necessary to solve problems that government programs should address. Others questioned whether Trump's involvement was genuinely altruistic or primarily motivated by public relations benefits. Marcus had learned to handle these criticisms professionally, always focusing on results rather than responding to political attacks. On a Tuesday morning in June, Marcus was preparing for a presentation to the New York City Council about expanding the foundation's housing program when he received an unexpected phone call. The caller identified himself as James Morrison, a reporter for the Washington Post. "Mr. Williams, I'm calling because we've received some allegations about your foundation that I wanted to give you a chance to respond to," Morrison said. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. "What kind of allegations?" "A former employee of the foundation claims that money donated for veteran services is being diverted to other Trump Organization projects. There are also questions about the actual number of veterans you've helped. Can you comment on these charges?" The accusations were completely false, but Marcus knew that false stories could spread faster than true ones in the current media environment. He told Morrison that the foundation's finances were audited by independent accountants and that all records were available for review. He also provided contact information for dozens of veterans who had been helped by the program. After hanging up, Marcus immediately called Amanda Richardson and Trump to inform them about the reporter's call. Trump was characteristically direct in his response. "Marcus, we knew this would happen eventually. When you're successful, people try to tear you down. The good news is that our books are clean, and our results speak for themselves." The Washington Post story, published 3 days later, was more balanced than Marcus had feared. While it included the allegations from the disgruntled former employee, it also featured interviews with veterans who had been helped by the foundation and independent verification of the program's success rate. The headline read, "Trump Foundation for Veterans shows results despite questions about motives." The story created a brief media storm, with other outlets picking up the controversy. Marcus found himself defending the foundation on several news programs, but he stuck to the facts and let the results speak for themselves. Within a week, the story had largely faded from public attention, replaced by newer controversies and scandals. More significant than the media attention was a phone call Marcus received from Michael Chen, a Marine veteran who had seen one of his television interviews. Michael was living in his car in Los Angeles with his wife and 2 young children, having lost his job due to PTSD-related issues that made it difficult for him to function in a traditional workplace. "I saw you on TV talking about the foundation," Michael said. "I know you probably get a lot of calls, but I didn't know where else to turn. My kids are sleeping in a car, man. I served 3 tours in Iraq, and now I can't even provide a roof for my family." Marcus spent an hour on the phone with Michael, learning about his situation and connecting him with the foundation's Los Angeles partner organization. Within 2 weeks, Michael and his family were in transitional housing, and he was enrolled in a job training program that accounted for his PTSD limitations. 3 months later, Michael called Marcus with an update. He had completed the training program and found steady employment with a construction company that specialized in hiring veterans. His family was now living in their own apartment, and his children were enrolled in school. "Marcus, I want you to know that you probably saved my life," Michael said during the call. "I was at the end of my rope when I called you. I had started thinking about ways to make sure my wife and kids would be okay without me. You gave me hope when I had run out of options." Stories like Michael's reminded Marcus why the foundation's work was so important. The media attention, political criticism, and administrative challenges were all secondary to the core mission of helping veterans rebuild their lives. Each success story validated the decision to take on this responsibility. As the foundation approached its first anniversary, Marcus was invited to speak at the annual Veterans Day ceremony at Arlington National Cemetery. Standing before the graves of fallen service members, he reflected on how dramatically his life had changed since that morning when he had been preparing to pack up his cardboard sign to make room for Trump's security detail. "A year ago, I was invisible," Marcus told the audience of veterans, military families, and government officials. "Society had written me off as a failure, someone who couldn't handle civilian life. But the truth is, I wasn't a failure. I was failed by systems that didn't understand what veterans need to transition successfully from military to civilian life." The speech received a standing ovation, but more importantly, it resulted in commitments from several major corporations to fund expansion of the foundation's programs to 10 additional cities. Marcus had learned that his personal story was powerful, but it was most effective when used as a bridge to help others rather than as an end in itself. The foundation's second year brought new challenges and opportunities. They launched a program specifically for female veterans who faced unique obstacles that traditional services often overlooked. They also developed partnerships with major employers who committed to hiring veterans regardless of gaps in their employment history. Marcus's personal growth during this period was as remarkable as the foundation's expansion. He had completed his treatment for PTSD and was sleeping through most nights without nightmares. He had also started dating again, having met Lisa Rodriguez at a veteran support group where he was speaking. Lisa was a Navy veteran who worked as a social worker. and she understood both his military background and his commitment to helping other veterans. The relationship with Lisa helped Marcus realize how much he had healed from his years on the streets. He was able to trust someone again, to be vulnerable without fear, and to plan for a future that extended beyond just surviving day to day. Their relationship was built on mutual respect and shared values rather than dependency or desperation. One evening, as Marcus and Lisa were having dinner at a restaurant near his apartment, he reflected on the journey that had brought him to this point. 2 years ago, I thought my life was over, he told her. I couldn't imagine ever being happy again or feeling like I had something valuable to contribute to the world. What changed? Lisa asked, though she already knew parts of the story. Meeting Mr. Trump was the catalyst, Marcus replied. But the real change happened when I realized that my experience on the streets, as painful as it was, gave me something valuable to offer other people. My worst period became my greatest qualification for helping others. The foundation had also attracted attention from other celebrities and wealthy individuals who wanted to support veteran causes. Several major fundraising events had been organized, raising millions of dollars for program expansion. Marcus had learned to navigate these high-profile events with confidence, understanding that his role was to keep the focus on the veterans being served rather than on the donors being recognized. However, the success brought unexpected personal challenges. Marcus sometimes felt overwhelmed by the responsibility of representing so many people's hopes and needs. He had become a public figure, which meant less privacy and constant scrutiny of his actions and words. There were days when he missed the simplicity of his old life, even though he knew he would never want to return to homelessness. Dr. Patricia Williams continued to work with Marcus as he navigated these new pressures. Success brings its own forms of stress, she reminded him during one session. You've gone from having no expectations placed on you to having thousands of people depending on you. That's a tremendous psychological adjustment. Marcus had also begun writing a book about his experiences, working with a ghostwriter to tell his story in detail. The book would serve as both a memoir and a guide for other veterans struggling with similar challenges. Publishers were interested, and the advance would provide financial security beyond his foundation salary. As Marcus's second Veterans Day speech approached, he chose to focus on the theme of transformation and second chances. Standing again at Arlington National Cemetery, he looked out at an audience that now included many veterans who had been helped by the Foundation's programs. 2 years ago, I was a cautionary tale, Marcus began. Today, I hope to be proof that no one is beyond redemption, no situation is permanent, and no person is worthless. The same experiences that nearly destroyed me became the foundation for helping others rebuild their lives. The speech was broadcast nationally and became one of the most watched Veterans Day addresses in recent years. But what meant most to Marcus were the calls and letters from veterans who said his words had given them hope to keep fighting their own battles. By the end of the Foundation's second year, they had helped over 800 veterans find stable housing and employment. The program had expanded to 15 cities, and similar foundations were being established in other countries. Marcus had been invited to speak at the United Nations about veteran homelessness as a global issue. The transformation from homeless veteran to international advocate seemed impossible, but it had happened step by step, day by day, through the combination of one person's willingness to help and another person's determination to rebuild his life. Marcus understood that his story was extraordinary not because of the dramatic rescue, but because of the ordinary daily work of healing, growing, and serving others that had followed. 3 years after that chance encounter outside Trump Tower, Marcus Williams stood in the same spot where he had once held a cardboard sign asking for help. This time, he was there for the groundbreaking ceremony of the Marcus Williams Veterans Housing Complex, a 50-unit apartment building specifically designed for homeless veterans transitioning back to independent living. The ceremony attracted Hundreds of attendees, including veterans who had been helped by the foundation, local politicians, media representatives, and Trump himself. Marcus wore a tailored suit and spoke with the confidence of someone who had found his purpose in life. The transformation was complete, but the journey was far from over. "This building represents more than just housing," Marcus told the gathered crowd. "It represents hope, second chances, and the belief that every person who served this country deserves dignity and support when they need it most." The housing complex was the foundation's most ambitious project yet. Each apartment was designed with input from formerly homeless veterans, incorporating features that addressed their specific needs: soundproof walls for those dealing with PTSD, secure storage for personal belongings, and common areas that fostered community without forcing unwanted social interaction. Trump spoke at the ceremony, emphasizing the partnership between private enterprise and veteran advocacy. "Marcus Williams has shown what's possible when we combine resources with genuine understanding of the problem. This isn't government bureaucracy. This is Americans helping Americans." The media coverage of the groundbreaking was overwhelmingly positive, but Marcus had learned not to let praise go to his head any more than he had let earlier criticism discourage him. The real measure of success would be whether the veterans who moved into the building were able to rebuild stable, independent lives. After the ceremony, Marcus received a surprise phone call from his former commanding officer in Afghanistan, Colonel David Martinez. They had lost touch after Marcus's discharge, and the colonel had only recently learned about Marcus's story through news coverage. "Williams, I always knew you were a good Marine, but I had no idea you had this kind of leadership potential," the colonel said. "What you've built with this foundation is more impressive than anything I've seen in 30 years of military service." The conversation with his former commander was emotional for Marcus. Colonel Martinez had been a father figure during his military service, and hearing his approval meant more than any media accolades or political endorsements. It also reminded Marcus of the person he had been before PTSD and homelessness had derailed his life. That evening, Marcus had dinner with Lisa at their favorite restaurant. Over the past year, their relationship had deepened, and Marcus had been thinking about proposing marriage. The success of the foundation had given him confidence that he could build a stable future, not just for himself, but for a family. "I've been thinking about something," Marcus said as they shared dessert. 3 years ago, I thought my life was over. Now I feel like it's just beginning. I want to share that new beginning with you." Lisa smiled, having sensed that this conversation was coming. "Are you asking me to marry you, Marcus Williams?" "I am," Marcus replied, producing a ring he had been carrying for weeks, waiting for the right moment. "I know I'm still a work in progress, but I want to build the rest of my life with you." Lisa's yes was followed by tears of joy from both of them. The engagement represented another milestone in Marcus's journey from despair to hope, from isolation to connection, from surviving to thriving. The foundation continued to expand its reach and impact. By its 3rd anniversary, they had helped over 1,500 veterans with a success rate that exceeded 90%. The program had been studied by researchers at several universities, and the model was being replicated by organizations across the country. Marcus's book, From the Streets to Service: A Veteran's Journey of Redemption, became a bestseller and was optioned for a television movie. The success brought additional opportunities for speaking engagements and consulting work with other nonprofit organizations. However, Marcus was careful not to let the fame overshadow the foundation's core mission. He insisted on spending at least 2 days every week working directly with newly arrived veterans, maintaining his connection to the people the foundation served. These interactions kept him grounded and reminded him of his own journey from hopelessness to purpose. One of the veterans Marcus worked with personally was Daniel Thompson, a young Marine who had lost both legs to an IED in Syria. Daniel's physical disabilities were challenging, but his psychological wounds were even deeper. He had attempted suicide twice before arriving at the Foundation's program. "I don't see the point of going on," Daniel told Marcus during their first meeting. "I can't do the things I used to do. I can't be the person I used to be. What's left for me?" Marcus recognized the despair in Daniel's voice because he had felt it himself. "Daniel, I understand that feeling of being lost and worthless. I lived on the streets for 3 years because I couldn't see any other future for myself. But here's what I learned. Sometimes the life you're meant to live is completely different from the one you planned. And that's okay." Over the following months, Marcus worked with Daniel to help him find new sources of meaning and purpose. Daniel discovered a talent for peer counseling and eventually became one of the Foundation's most effective advocates for disabled veterans. His transformation paralleled Marcus's own journey from despair to service. The Foundation's impact extended beyond individual success stories. Their advocacy work had influenced policy changes at both state and federal levels, increasing funding for veteran mental health services and housing programs. Marcus had testified before Congress about the effectiveness of comprehensive support programs versus traditional charity models. As Marcus prepared for his 4th annual Veterans Day speech, he reflected on how much had changed since that morning. When he had been preparing to fold up his cardboard sign, the homeless man who had once been invisible to most of society was now a nationally recognized advocate for veteran issues. The speech took place not at Arlington Cemetery this time, but at the White House, where Marcus had been invited to address a gathering of veteran service organizations and government officials. Standing in the East Room, he looked out at an audience that included many veterans whose lives had been changed by the Foundation's work. "4 years ago, I was convinced that my story was ending," Marcus began. "I was wrong. It was just the beginning of a new chapter. Every veteran in this room has the potential for transformation, regardless of their current circumstances. Our job is to provide the support and opportunities that make that transformation possible." The speech received a standing ovation, but what moved Marcus most were the conversations afterward with veterans who approached him to share their own stories of struggle and recovery. Each conversation reminded him that his work was far from finished, and that his own story was part of a larger narrative about resilience, second chances, and the power of human connection. As Marcus and Lisa drove home that evening, she asked him what he was thinking about. "I'm thinking about how one moment can change everything," he replied. 3 words from Mr. Trump. "You're a veteran, aren't you?" started a chain of events that saved my life and allowed me to help save others. It makes me wonder who I might encounter tomorrow, who needs someone to see them and ask the right question. The Marcus Williams Veterans Foundation continued to grow and evolve, but its founder never forgot the lesson learned on a Manhattan sidewalk, that everyone deserves to be seen, everyone has value, and everyone's story can change in ways they never imagined possible. The homeless man who had once asked for help had become the person others turned to when they needed hope, proving that redemption and transformation are always possible for those willing to do the work of rebuilding their lives.